Writing prompt. Emotions are sold in glass jars. Happiness is something only the wealthy can afford. The poor are only left with the feelings of sadness and grief. It all changed when someone started selling anger. Verity worked in the new factory for over 6 months now. She took her fair share of the free emotion they offered all the workers, now dubbed apathy. But within a few weeks of starting her new job, she noticed the hollow eyes and shrinking forms of the other workers. The ones who took apathy as often as the factory dispensary would give it slowly faded to walking ghosts. This wasn't the vacant look of the emotionless, but almost as if they'd given up on some part of life. So Verity pocketed her dosages, only allowing herself 1 out of every 4 they gave her. The times between when all emotions faded were difficult, but nothing she hadn't experienced before. She skipped more and more dosages, saving them in a box in her small living quarters. Verity stared at the overflowing box of apathy. It was now months since she took any kind of dose, and she worried something inside her was broken beyond repair. This wasn't depression. She'd tried that before, and it wasn't the same. She felt nothing for so long, she slowly accepted it. Everything around her looked clinical, almost robotic, like a series of repetitive motions. She looked at the box overflowing with apathy and wondered what would happen if she drank all the vials stored here, or at least as many as she could. She found it was a puzzle to be solved, a detached question of probabilities. Without more thought than that, Verity opened the first vial and drank it. She categorized the feel and taste of the familiar liquid. She did the same with another, then another. The fog of apathy beginning to descend, but she observed it like someone watching from the outside. She lost count of the number of vials she took, but she was sitting around a considerable number of empty tubes. Her entire body felt slow, like her heart didn't care enough to keep pumping. The world grew fuzzy around the edges, a circle of darkness at the periphery of her view getting larger. Her fingers were almost too numb to uncap the next bottle, but she managed it one more time. She tipped one last vial into her mouth just as the world turned black. Verity. Petite hands grabbed her around the shoulders and shook. Verity, wake up! What have you done? She recognized the voice, another girl from the factory named Jill. Verity associated the name Jill with the word friend. She wondered why she would so immediately associate the two. I'm fine, Verity croaked. She rubbed her eyes and forced herself to sit up. Why are you here? Jill flinched and shook her head. You haven't been to work in 3 days. Boss figured you went on some kind of bender, but I didn't expect anything this dangerous. She motioned to the pile of empty bottles still surrounding Verity. You didn't need to come. I'm not going back to the factory, Verity said, straightening her clothes and picking up the empty bottles. Jill just froze. You're not going back to the factory? How will you survive? How will you eat? She gasped in horror. How will you get your emotions? I've saved almost all my pay for the past 6 months. I can live on that until I find what to do next. Verity stood up and cleaned the last remnants of the mess. And I don't need emotions anymore. As soon as Verity said it, she knew it was true. This wasn't some force of will or resolution she was making. She didn't want the bottles of emotion, even the premium ones. They didn't affect her, didn't hold any desire or sway. Some part of Verity blandly wondered if she was broken. What? Jill giggled. Verity noted the higher tone of Jill's laugh, the way she backed away from her. She concluded the laugh was more of nervousness or fear than actual humor. Are you scared of me? Verity asked, trying to figure out what category to put Jill so she knew how best to deal with her. Of course not, another high-pitched giggle, then the laughter abruptly stopped. You're serious, Jill said in a hoarse whisper. Verity concluded it definitely meant wariness, a precursor of fear. Fear could be dangerous, it was unpredictable. Not the emotional response, because Jill had not taken that emotion. A visceral response, so primitive it was stored inside everyone else, even below the emotion. Verity pumped 2 vials of apathy and put the box back on the shelf. Sociopath, Jill whispered. Verity stopped and cocked her head. Sociopaths were an old myth, someone twisted by lack of emotion. Verity had been told stories of sociopaths as a child. They were warning tales about people who didn't follow the rules and didn't get emotions. They turned into monsters. Yes, Verity concluded, fear was dangerous and should be neutralized. Verity forced herself to smile and laugh, tipping her head back in the way the shop owners flooded with happiness did. She took 2 steps to Jill and uncapped the apathy in her palm. I prefer to think of this as freedom, Verity said as she grabbed the back of Jill's hair and yanked hard. As the girl went to scream, Verity poured both bottles of apathy in her mouth. Jill sputtered and struggled for a second, but as the emotion took effect, the girl calmed. Go home. Don't come here again, Verity said. She couldn't see much use in the girl anymore. Jill blinked a few times before routinely going about her assigned task. After Jill left, Verity turned to look out the window. She vaguely wondered what else there was to do in this town that wasn't connected to emotions. The new factory loomed, taking up most of the skyline from her window. Verity soberly contemplated what everyone else would be like without emotion. They could be as free as she was. But most would never be brave enough to try. She drummed her fingers on the windowpane, considering if there was a way to send out tainted batch of apathy, similar in strength to the dose she took. That would fix these people.